Welcome to the Brand and Market Podcast, where branding clarity meets marketing strategy. I'm your host, Allie Haney, founder of Brand and Market, a boutique agency dedicated to helping small businesses craft intentional brands and effective marketing plans. Each week, I share practical tips and insights to help you, especially those of you in real estate-related industries, build a standout brand to attract your brand's biggest fans. Let's dive in. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Brand and Market Podcast. I'm your host, Allie Haney. Last week, I mentioned some of the audio issues that my podcast producer brought to my attention. So naturally, last week when I recorded my solo episode, I committed the same grievous errors that I had been in weeks past and did the exact same thing that she had asked me not to do. So let's hope that this week the audio is better than it has been in the past. And we will continue to troubleshoot to make this as enjoyable of a podcast as possible for you all to listen to. This week's topic is not the audio of my podcast. It is, however, a book review for a book that's maybe on your reading list. Maybe you have read it or read it a while ago, but it is one that is particularly poignant to our short-term rental owners and hosts. That book is Unreasonable Hospitality by Will Guidara. And Will, if you ever listen to this, I hope I'm saying your last name correctly, and please forgive me if I didn't. I'm actually a member of a couple of different book clubs, both a fiction book club within my community, as well as the short-term rental book club, which is a virtual book club. I am happy to link that. You can't join my community one in my subdivision unless you live here. But the virtual short-term rental one, you are welcome to join. And I will say that I'm not the best book club member. I often read some of the book, but sometimes I don't read any of the book. But I do try to show up for the meeting so that I can still glean the information from the book. Short-term rental virtual book club is really great, though, because they send you the actual copy of the book every month. You don't have to think about it. It's a monthly subscription fee and it shows up on your doorstep and you can read it or not, I guess. I am an audio book listener as well. I'll do that while I'm folding the laundry or while I'm driving. I did that specifically with Unreasonable Hospitality, which funny enough was not on the reading list for the book club. That was just one that I decided to read on my own. Gosh, I'm sure you guys are making some judgments based off of me reading books that are not in the book club and not reading the books that are in the book club. It is what it is. I had heard about Unreasonable Hospitality a while ago, but Short-Term Rental Book Club was at the Level Up Your Listing Summit back when I went to that in March. And they had a couple of extra copies of previous books that they had read with the book club, and one of which was Unreasonable Hospitality. So because it was on my reading list and they were selling books for a very good price, I did not have any extra room in my suitcase, but left some things at the Airbnb where I was staying and made room for it. So I started reading it actually on the plane ride back. I read the first chapter and was not immediately hooked because I read that it was about the food service industry. So the author, Will, he owned, or well, I guess worked at, it's about his whole journey throughout the restaurant industry. But he worked his way up to owning the restaurant, but was a manager for a long stint of that journey and worked through a lot of major challenges, including a recession, amongst other things, and basically rebranding the entire place. It was a very interesting book. I am going to dive into some of the main points or takeaways that I have and how we could apply those to the short-term rental world. You may get into real estate investing because you feel like it is going to provide generational wealth for you and your family, which absolutely it can and will. But when you get into the world of short-term rentals, you're really not in the business of real estate investing. You are in the business of hospitality. Because really what you are is a little micro hotel, and being able to show up for your guests the way that a hotel would, the way that goes a little bit over the top in the best ways possible, is what I'm going to be talking about today by pulling out little gems that I gleaned from Unreasonable Hospitality. So without further ado, let's jump right in. A couple of times as I was listening to the audiobook down the road, I would have to screenshot where I was, which chapter and where about in the chapter that I was, so that I could go back and actually look at the text of the book. so that I could highlight certain quotes. And so this is one of those quotes that really stood out to me that I had to screenshot as I was driving down the road. The moment you start to pursue service through a lens of hospitality, you understand there's nobility in it. We do have the ability to make their lives better by creating a magical world they can escape to. And I see that not as an opportunity, but as a responsibility and a reason for pride. So the point that he was trying to make in this section was that a lot of times the restaurant that he was a manager for and that he eventually owned was like a Michelin restaurant. It was very high end, very luxurious. So it was not something that was a necessity or a commodity. It was something that people treated themselves to. He was trying to make the point that even though we are selling a luxury or something that is not required for people to be able to live, that's not in vain. We are still giving them an escape. We are giving them an experience. We are giving them a memory. There was a very specific recountance of a memory that he had at a restaurant that one of the chefs that worked at a different restaurant, I think it was still in New York City, but that he was given when he was in college. And that chef took him back to behind the scenes to allow him to see his food being made, to see the process, a glimpse behind the curtain, if you will. And that how that memory became such a core memory that shaped, the way that he wanted to make people feel when they came to his restaurant. That's what he's trying to say here is that even though we are providing an experience that's not necessary to the well-being of people's lives, he says there's still nobility in it. It's a responsibility and a reason for pride. Everything that you allow them or make it able for them to experience at your short-term rental, at your vacation home, that can be impactful. I mean, some of the guest notes that we've had in our guest books have been everywhere from thank you for allowing me to experience Thanksgiving with my military member after him being deployed for 6 or 7 months. That is very well could be a core memory for someone. At one of our properties, we did allow small events. And so someone hosted their baby shower for their, extended friends and family. And they were able to, invite people into the home, host people there. One of the other rentals, we have one family that comes every single year, every single August. We know that their family is going to come. And it's so fun to know their story that they had another rental that they went to every year in the same area, but that rental no longer accepts reservations. So they were looking for a new place because they go to Kings Dominion, which in the Central Virginia area, that's like a Six Flags or a Cedar Point. It's an amusement park. And so they go to Kings Dominion every year as their family trip. And once they got to the house, they never left. They never went to Kings Dominion because they were having such a good time, just enjoying each other's company and being there with one another that they were like, we don't need the amusement park. We just want to be here with each other. And so they just finished up year 4 of coming into staying at that house over and over again. So you're providing, there's nobility in being able to give the space to be able to have those memories made. And I'm sure there's probably one vacation that you remember in your childhood or even in your adulthood that you're like, that vacation, I will never, ever forget that. And so we are providing that through our Unreasonable Hospitality as short-term rental owners and hosts. My second screenshotted text that I had to go and highlight later was, adversity is a terrible thing to waste. All your well-laid plans go out the window. Though it's easy to panic, creativity is the better solution. This quote was specifically in the section of the book when they were facing a recession and they were looking to cut their expenses while not sacrificing the guest experience and that unreasonable hospitality. So if you know anything about my story, you all know that we've been through it the last few years, specifically with our Kentucky property. But it even goes all the way back to our first North Carolina property when we had long-term renters there. They did not treat the home very well. So when they left after a year of renting, we had to revamp and renovate the whole house. They had fed the feral cats. So there were cats all around our house. There was cat feces just spread across the walls. There was black mold in the refrigerator. There were holes in the walls. So that adversity, it would have been very easy for me to just like mentally check out and say, I'm going to sell it as is and be done with it. My hands will be wiped clean of it. But our well-laid plans of being a military family and doing the long-term rental thing that most military families do when they move base to base, we had to figure it out. Instead, we got a little creative and learned all about how to host on Airbnb, and we turned that long-term rental into a short-term rental and found it to be very, very successful. Moving on to our Kentucky property, we purchased it to be a wedding venue. We had issues with the county zoning and neighbors not wanting the wedding venue to be on that property. And instead, again, of jumping ship, we figured it out. We got creative and turned it into a short-term rental again that still runs as a successful short-term rental today. So all these things, like it's very easy to panic, but when you turn that adversity into an opportunity, it could be something as simple as like in the operations of a short-term rental on the day-to-day. We had one time that we had a same-day check-in, check-out situation, and all of a sudden the guests texted me as they were leaving, the ones that were checking out, and said, 2 of the toilets are completely stopped up. They won't flush and they're getting ready to overflow. And that was at 11 a.m. and we had new guests checking in at 4. And you can better believe that I turned that adversity into an opportunity to be a great steward, a great hostess, and a great person to work with in terms of the contractor or the plumber that came out to help us. Using that adversity to really find an opportunity to be positive, I think is a great way to be unreasonably hospitable. Hey host, you've got a lot of responsibilities on your plate. Guest communication, cleaning coordination, marketing, and everything in between. If you've been listening to this podcast for a while and love all the great actionable tips, but just have zero time to execute on them, then it might be time to get some help. You're in luck. I've been a superhost for over 6 years with over 200 5-star reviews, and I'm here to help you elevate your short-term rental business. I've co-hosted properties across 3 states, managing everything remotely and ensuring my clients' guests have a seamless 5-star experience every single time. Here at Branded Market, we focus on creating a unique guest experience through cohesive branding for your property. It gives boutique hotel rather than side hustle short-term rental. So whether you need help with guest communication, maintaining your listing, or just keeping things running smoothly day to day, my co-hosting services take the stress off your shoulders so you can focus on growing your business and portfolio or getting that side hustle back over to the side. Let me make your listing into your legacy, one great guest experience at a time. Ready to take your short-term rental to the next level? Head to www.brandonmarket.co/co-hosting to learn more about how my co-hosting services can help you. Okay, the next, it's like a series of quotes for this one, actually. Was closer towards the end of the book, and I actually was folding laundry when I heard these quotes, and they were back to back to back. I don't remember what chapter it was, but I had to stop and like write them down in my notebook. So the first one is, what would you try if you knew you couldn't fail? That's the first one. And I'm going to dive into it a little bit before I go to the second one. But what would you try if you knew you couldn't fail? Honestly, I feel like that fear of failure is what holds me back, especially after our time in Kentucky. And so just hearing that question, kind of challenging my framework, my mindset of the way that I approach potential new acquisitions. We've been looking for a property to invest in for quite some time now, and I feel like I can always find something that's not quite right. Sometimes that's an accurate assessment. Other times I do think that assessment comes out of fear of failure because I felt like for so long that the Kentucky property was a failure. But if I really had to look introspectively and say, what would I try if I knew I couldn't fail? I'd be trying all the things. And so I want you to take that kind of as an encouragement and a piece of advice, a rhetorical question that can maybe impact you from Mr. Will Guidara. The second one is the opposite of a good idea is also a good idea. And that one's kind of a little bit meta, like gets into your psyche a little bit. But what he was trying to say was the opposite of unreasonable hospitality is reasonable hospitality. So reasonable hospitality could be doing all of the things that all of the hosts do, sending the check-in instructions, sending the check-out instructions, potentially even having a welcome guide, but not one that's really thorough. Okay. So like reasonable hospitality is a good idea. It would be bad if we didn't have at least some level of hospitality when we are in the short-term rental business. But the opposite of that good idea is unreasonable hospitality, going over the top to serve your guests. And that's really what I want to channel as I continue to grow my co-hosting business. I don't plan to get large within my business. I love being able to look at those little micro details and incorporate ways that are going to make people feel special, that are going to be the reasons for pride, the nobility in the hospitality. I want to really focus on each individual property to be able to take it to the next level and be unreasonable. And the third quote that came from that ending part of Unreasonable Hospitality, like I said, these were zingers, like back to back to back. And the next one is, a dream will never come true if you don't say it out loud. That one also really hit me because when we were in Kentucky and I was so excited about our wedding venue venture, I felt like I was sharing it with everybody, including the neighbors that were surrounding us. I did it to be transparent. I did it to be open so that I could hear concerns from neighbors if they had any. I was not at all scared of any sort of pushback. I thought that with my grace and my ability to communicate well, that I would be able to hear their concerns and calm their concerns. But that did not happen. In fact, the opposite happened. The more that I tried to address their concerns, the more the concerns grew. In addition to that, once we decided to go the short-term rental route and kind of abandon the wedding venue idea, there was a local property that already had an established wedding venue that then took pieces of our idea and incorporated them into their business plan, their business model. And after that, overall, just that experience for me, I really closed up myself from putting out any additional dreams into the world, like manifesting them, speaking them into existence. And so it was kind of like a little dagger to my heart, like calling me out. A dream will never come true if you don't say it out loud. So here I am using my podcast to say my dream out loud. I have so many dreams. I am one of those serial entrepreneurs that loves to be in a lot of different things, but I really would love to sign on 2 more co-hosting clients by the end of the year. I believe this episode will air towards the end of September, and I'm going to use Q4 to find my next 2 co-hosting clients. If you know of somebody that has a vacation home, maybe they're already with a property manager already but aren't satisfied with them. Maybe you are DIYing your hosting right now, but you're finding that passive income isn't as passive as you wanted it to be with the day-to-day operations of a short-term rental. I am putting it out into existence. The second thing that I'm putting it out into existence is that we would love to eventually have a micro resort, a small resort, maybe 5 to 10 acres, where there's common uses of the bigger amenities, a pool, a sauna, hot tub, etc., while having individual smaller units that have a lot of unique character about them. Think like one being a silo, one being a train car, one being a tree house, and just this little island of misfits on this micro resort that you can come and have a really unique stay while still being able to have a little bit of a community surrounding you of other people that also want to have that unique stay, being able to share those common amenities. So if you know of a piece of property, or if you want to talk more about being involved in that micro resort idea, putting it out into the universe because of the things that I read in Will's book. The 4th quote is, hospitality is not transactional. Every guest interaction is a part of a holistic experience. It's not just an exchange for space, for money. I really encourage you all to make the experience as cohesive as possible. A couple of ways that you can do this is the curated local recommendations. I spoke on this a little bit last week, that we have basically 2 different bourbon tours laid out for the Kentucky property. One, if you're actually a bourbon connoisseur and want to taste the best bourbon, then go to these 5 distilleries, versus If you're really here to just like cross it off the bucket list, you're here down for a good time, these are the best distilleries to go for the best, most fun, engaging tours. Those are two different types of people that are coming to visit our property, and they're able to have their own unique experience based off of what they want out of the trip. So those unique and dialed in experiences that you would be like, wow, they really went over the top for this. They're being unreasonable. And then the last thing that I want to touch on, and there's not a direct quote from this section, but it's more of a concept. In his book, Will mentioned Dreamweavers. And so this Dreamweaver concept came as the servers at the restaurant were overhearing conversations from the patrons that were coming to eat at the restaurant. So let's say, for example, while they were at the restaurant, they were having a conversation with their acquaintance or their friend about a movie that they had seen a few months previously in the theaters. And they were raving about how good this movie was. They would literally have someone on staff that they titled a Dreamweaver to go out and go purchase the DVD of that movie to be able to gift it to the person, the person receiving the conversation of this movie was so good, but he hadn't seen it yet. How much magic does that add into the experience? It's absolutely incredible. And one of the first iterations of this before they actually had a position called Dreamweavers was that if at the end these meals could be up to 4 hours long, that people were sitting down at the table going through all the different courses. And so sometimes if people were attending the restaurant for the first time, they didn't know exactly how long they were going to be sitting there and enjoying this meal. So they would overpark their meter and instead only pay, let's say, for 3 hours when they needed 4. Will, as a server, would go pay the meter for them and run all the way back to the restaurant to continue to serve them. So he was going above and beyond in every single interaction. And as they developed this idea of Dreamweavers, they continue to see occurrences that would reoccur. For example, people came to the restaurant very often for anniversary. People came to the restaurant very often for a birthday or a job promotion in their career. And so they would have these toolkits on hand for specific things that would be applicable for someone that was attending the restaurant for their birthday, their anniversary, or their job promotion, so that they could essentially automate or at least make it more of a system to have those things on hand for the Dreamweavers, but still be able to have time for those Dreamweavers to go out and get that specific movie or that specific keychain. Or I think even one point, this Michelin star, 4-star restaurant, they went out and bought, they heard somebody raving about a hot dog that they had wanted to get on the street from their favorite hot dog stand, but they literally brought their luggage to the restaurant because that restaurant was their last stop before they got on the plane. He had a Dreamweaver go out and go get that hot dog from that hot dog stand, and they plated it as if it were a 4-course meal, like a course and a 4-course meal. So they did it up all fancy and got them their hot dog that they wouldn't have otherwise been able to get on their New York trip that they only do once a year. So you can see how they are taking it absolutely to the next level of unreasonable hospitality. And in today's day and age, even if you're hosting remotely, DoorDash makes a lot of things possible. And it's as easy as asking in the welcome message of hey, is there a special occasion for this trip? What's the reason for travel? And that way you can have a little bit more insight into who your guest is, what they might need, and what can make their trip unreasonably hospitable. So that was one of the things that I took away. The biggest takeaways was the Dreamweaver's position and really giving that individualized attention. And one caveat to this I will say is the more systems you have in place for those day-to-day operations, which is really great to do, using a PMS, a property management system, like Lodgify. For example, anytime I get a new reservation, it automatically messages the cleaner so that's something that's not on my plate. It's not an action that I have to take. And that way that frees up time for me to be able to be unreasonable in my business. So put those systems in place if you don't already have them. There have been previous episodes that we've gone over systems, and I will put those in the show notes as well, just so if that's something that you need, you can go pursue that. It really impacted me, the Dreamweaver position. It is something that I will start to incorporate in my own rentals as well as the ones that I co-host. That's going to be what leads to those 5-star reviews. A few key takeaways for our short-term rental owners is hospitality, especially unreasonable hospitality. It can be your differentiator. It's not just that your property is clean or that your property has pretty furniture. Those are both important, but the unreasonable hospitality is what truly can take a trip and turn it into a core memory. Next is the creativity and intentionality can really take an adverse situation and make it into a beautiful situation. You just got to be willing to be a little bit creative and think outside the box. Next, consistency plus those personal touches is going to equal higher reviews, repeat bookings, and guest loyalty. So think of ways that you can incorporate that Dreamweaver mindset into your hospitality. And finally, build processes and systems so that you have space to be able to actually do those fun things, those unreasonable things. If unreasonable hospitality inspired you to rethink your guest experience, I can help you implement those ideas in your own short-term rental, whether it's building a brand or creating a marketing plan for those repeat clients, or if you are looking for a full-service co-host. Please, let's turn your property into a memorable, revenue-generating experience. Click the link in the show notes to schedule a discovery call, and we can get this party started. Thank you guys for hanging out with me, and thank you, Will Guidara, for imparting some of your amazing, unreasonable hospitality ideas onto us from your restaurant experience to apply to our short-term rental experience. So until next week, which I believe is the birthday episode for my daughter Huxley, I'm so excited to bring her on, and she's very excited to record for her 2nd year in a row. So can't wait to talk to you guys next week. And until then, here's to being the best in your brand and your market. You just completed another episode of the Brand and Market Podcast. If you found this helpful, please rate, review, and subscribe to help others find this show and so that you never miss an episode. Don't forget to take a look at the show notes for all the resources mentioned today. See you next Wednesday, and as always, I'm here cheering you on as you build your dream brand and business.